My ex-husband called 3 years after our divorce, voice shaking, begging me to sell him a 60-foot strip of land I bought for $28,000 because without it, his $1.4 million organic farm had no legal way to reach the county road. My name is Sarah Kincaid. I'm 47 years old, and I've been a county land surveyor for 23 years. I measure property lines for a living. I document boundaries that people assume exist but never bother to verify. Numbers don't lie, soil maps don't forgive wishful thinking. And unrecorded informal arrangements between neighboring farm families eventually collapse under the weight of a single generation change or a single real estate transaction. I did not answer immediately. I let the phone ring twice more while I saved my work and closed the plat file. Then I picked up. "Sarah Kincaid," I said. "Miss Kincaid, this is Marcus Holt calling on behalf of Daniel Merrick. I appreciate you taking my call." His voice had that carefully measured formality that older rural attorneys use when they are trying to sound neutral but are actually deeply worried. I did not correct him on the miss. I just waited. "I am reaching out regarding a property matter that has recently come to Daniel's attention. It concerns an easement strip along the western boundary of the Merrick Farm off County Road 47. Specifically, a 60-foot corridor that provides access from the farm to the county road. Daniel has discovered that this easement is no longer available under the informal arrangement his family maintained with the Voss family for the past 90 years. He has also discovered that you are the current owner of that corridor." I said nothing. I let the silence stretch. Marcus cleared his throat. "Daniel would like to discuss the possibility of purchasing the easement from you. He is prepared to make a fair offer." "What does Daniel consider fair?" I asked. Marcus hesitated. $100,000. I pulled a yellow legal pad toward me and wrote the figure down. Then I wrote the date. Then I wrote Marcus Holt's name and the time of the call. I have been documenting conversations like this since I was 25 years old. Every meeting, every promise, every instance where someone assumed my silence meant agreement. "Tell Daniel I will think about it," I said. "I will be in touch within the week." "Miss Kincaid, I need to stress that this is a time-sensitive matter. Daniel's operation depends on access to that road. Without it, he cannot move equipment, transport product, or receive deliveries. His organic certification requires continuous operation. Any interruption could trigger a compliance review that would jeopardize his forward contracts. He has $890,000 in commitments that depend on maintaining certification." "I understand," I said. "I will be in touch within the week." I hung up before Marcus could respond. Then I sat very still in my office chair and stared at the framed surveying certifications on the wall. 3 states, 2 specialty endorsements, a floodplain management credential that had saved more than 1 rural county from FEMA disputes. I had built a career on knowing exactly where the invisible lines run. Property law is not about what people believe they own. It is about what the deed says. It is about what the plat shows. It is about whether the recorded easement matches the physical use, or whether someone has been crossing someone else's land for 90 years without ever bothering to file the paperwork. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thin file folder. Inside was a single deed. Parcel identification number, legal description, recorded at the county courthouse 30 days before my divorce from Daniel Merrick, finalized in 2016. The grantor was Raymond Voss, Jr., son of the Voss patriarch who had died in 2014. The grantee was Sarah Kincaid, then still married but already planning her exit. The purchase price was $28,000. The property was a 60-foot wide strip of land running along the western boundary of the Merrick Farm, connecting the farm's interior acreage to County Road 47. I had bought the only way in or out. I did not do it out of spite. I did it because I am a surveyor. And when I walked that property line in the summer of 2015, I saw what Daniel's family had never bothered to see. The Merrick Farm was landlocked. The original homestead included 140 owned acres in the interior. Over the decades, the family had leased an additional 100 acres from neighbors to expand the operation. But the physical access to the county road had always depended on crossing a narrow strip of land owned by the Voss family. It was an informal arrangement, a handshake between neighbors. The kind of thing that works perfectly well until the neighbor dies and his son decides to develop the property into a boutique winery and terminates every informal agreement his father ever made. When Raymond Voss Jr. listed that corridor for sale in the summer of 2015, I was the only person who understood what it meant. I was the only person who had spent 12 years mapping every inch of that farm. I was the only person who had filed the FEMA appeal in 2003 that saved the operation $180,000 after the spring floods. I was the only person who had rezoned the buffer zones to meet organic certification requirements. I was the only person who had paid for the new equipment barn, the prairie restoration along the creek, the soil testing that turned a struggling fourth-generation homestead into a high-value organic operation. And I was the person Daniel was preparing to divorce because he had been sleeping with Emma Talbot, the 38-year-old farm-to-table restaurant owner who had moved to the area from the city 2 years earlier and decided that organic farming was the next frontier of her personal brand. So I called Raymond Voss Jr. and made an offer. $28,000 cash, 30-day close, no inspection contingency. He accepted within 48 hours. I recorded the deed 1 week before Daniel's attorney served me with the divorce petition. I did not tell Daniel I owned the easement. I did not mention it during the settlement negotiations. I accepted his offer of $340,000 to buy out my share of the farm. I transferred the deed to the 240 acres we had built together. I moved my surveying practice 3 counties away. I let him think he had won, and then I waited. I waited for Raymond Voss Jr. to break ground on his winery project. I waited for the construction staging to require terminating the informal access arrangement his father had maintained. I waited for Daniel to receive the certified letter informing him that he no longer had permission to cross Voss property to reach the county road. I waited for him to search the county records and discover that the 60-foot corridor was now privately held. I waited for him to trace the deed back to the sale date. And I waited for him to realize that the sale date was 30 days before our divorce finalized. It took 3 years. 3 years for all the dominoes to fall. 3 years for Daniel's organic operation to reach its peak value. 3 years for Emma to become not just his affair partner but his business partner, co-signed on the operating loans, photographed at agricultural conferences, quoted in the local paper about the future of sustainable farming in the region. 3 years for the forward contracts to pile up, $890,000 in commitments to restaurants, distributors, and institutions that demanded certified organic product on a fixed delivery schedule. And then Raymond Voss Jr. sent the termination letter. I found out about it from a colleague who worked in the county planning office. She mentioned in passing that the Merrick farm was suddenly dealing with an access issue. She said it casually, the way you mention any piece of local real estate gossip. She had no idea I used to be married to Daniel. She had no idea I owned the access corridor. She just thought I might find it interesting from a surveying perspective. I thanked her for the information. Then I went home and waited for the phone to ring. It took 4 days. 4 days for Daniel to confirm that the Voss easement was gone. 4 days for him to search the county records and find my name on the deed. 4 days for him to sit in his farm office, probably in the same chair where I used to review plat maps while he worked, on crop rotations, and understand that his entire operation now depended on my goodwill. And then he called his attorney. Because Daniel has never been good at asking for things directly. He has always preferred to have someone else handle the uncomfortable conversations, someone else to negotiate, someone else to clean up the mess. Marcus Holt called me, and Marcus offered $100,000, as if that were a meaningful number. As if $100,000 could purchase my silence about the 12 years I spent building an operation that Daniel now claimed as his inheritance. As if $100,000 could buy back the access I had paid $28,000 to secure while he was planning to replace me with someone who wore a silver farm logo pendant necklace and spoke in performative, sustainability language for the press. I sat in my office and stared at the deed, 60 feet wide, running the entire length of the western boundary. Recorded 3 years and 4 months ago. Quiet title. No encumbrances, no liens. Just a clean strip of land that controlled everything. I picked up my phone and opened a new note. I wrote the date. I wrote Marcus Holt's offer. I wrote Daniel's current situation in bullet points. Landlocked, $890,000 in forward contracts, organic certification dependent on continuous operation, business partner who would not stay if the money disappeared. Then I wrote one more line at the bottom of the note. Counteroffer, $750,000. That was half the value of Daniel's organic operation at its current peak, half of what he had built on the foundation I had surveyed, mapped, rezoned, and financed, half of what he thought he owned outright. I did not send the counteroffer that day. I waited. I let Marcus Holt's message sit in my voicemail. I let Daniel sit with the knowledge that I owned the corridor and that he had no leverage. I let the clock run while his forward contracts ticked closer to delivery deadlines and his organic certification. Compliance window narrowed. I have learned that silence is the most expensive currency in any negotiation. People will pay anything to make it stop. They will offer everything they have just to hear you speak. And the longer you wait, the more desperate they become to know what you want. So I waited. I documented everything. I updated my notes. I reviewed the deed one more time. And I prepared to teach Daniel Merrick the same lesson I had learned 12 years ago when I first walked that property. Line with a transit and a measuring tape. The land does not care who you think you are. It only cares what the deed says. And the deed said I controlled the only way in. I waited 6 days before responding to Marcus Holt. That is not hesitation. That is documentation protocol. Every additional hour Daniel spent calculating his position was another hour I spent reviewing mine. I pulled county tax records showing the farm's current assessed value at $1.4 million. I cross-referenced organic certification databases confirming his premium contracts totaled $890,000 in forward commitments. I reviewed climatology reports showing the narrow harvest window for his main crops. And I sat with the deed to the 60-foot easement strip, tracing the meets and bounds description with my left thumb, feeling the survey transit callus catch on the paper. The easement was not just a corridor, it was a valve, and I controlled the flow. On Monday morning, I drafted my counteroffer, $750,000, exactly half the farm's current valuation. I included a payment structure, cash only, closing within 45 days, non-negotiable. I did not explain my reasoning. I did not justify the number. I simply stated the terms and attached a copy of the recorded easement deed as supporting documentation. Then I saved the document without sending it, because I wanted to understand who else was involved in Daniel's operation now. The business had changed since I left. The affair partner had become the business partner. Emma Talbot was not just sleeping with my ex-husband. She was co-signed on operating loans. She had invested capital. And according to the county assessor's records I pulled, she had filed a homestead exemption claiming the farmhouse as her primary residence. That detail mattered. If Emma had legal standing as a co-owner or secured creditor, any easement purchase would require her signature. If she walked away, Daniel's financing options collapsed. I needed to know the precise structure of their partnership before I named my final price. So I called Raymond Voss Jr. Raymond and I had maintained a professional relationship since the easement sale. He knew I was thorough. He knew I documented everything. And he knew that when I asked a question, it was because I already had half the answer and wanted to confirm the rest. His phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Sarah," he said. His voice carried that third-generation transactional directness, the tone of someone whose family had been buying and selling land since before zoning laws existed. "I wondered when you would call." I did not waste time on pleasantries. "Raymond, I need to understand the timeline on your winery development. Specifically when you notified Daniel that the informal access arrangement was terminated." He exhaled slowly. "I sent him a certified letter in March of this year, gave him 90 days notice that we were closing the old farm road and beginning site work. That put the termination date at June 15th. June 15th, I wrote that down. And he responded how?" Raymond made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. He did not respond at all. "Not until July, when my contractor started grading and he showed up with Emma demanding to know why we were blocking his access." I handed him a copy of the letter, told him he had been notified in writing. He claimed he never received it. "Certified mail does not lie," I said. "No," Raymond agreed. "It does not. Look, Sarah, I know you and Daniel have history, but this is not personal on my end. My father maintained that handshake easement for 40 years because it was neighborly and because, frankly, nobody cared about this parcel until I decided to develop it. The arrangement was never recorded. It was never formalized. And when Dad died and I inherited, I made it clear to Daniel that anything going forward needed to be in writing. Did you offer to sell him an easement? I did, August of last year. Told him I would deed him a 60-foot corridor for $50,000, which was more than fair given the acreage involved. He said he would think about it. Never followed up. Never made an offer. I assumed he was going to find another access route or negotiate something with the county. There is no other access route, I said. The farm is landlocked without your parcel. I know that now, Raymond said quietly. I did not realize it at the time. I assumed Daniel had done his due diligence. When I started getting calls from his attorney in September asking if I still owned the corridor, I told Marcus the same thing I am telling you. I sold that strip a long time ago. It is not mine to negotiate anymore. And you told him who bought it. I did. Silence settled between us. I could hear wind moving through the vineyard rows behind his house. Raymond cleared his throat. Sarah, I do not know what is happening between you and Daniel, and I do not need to. But I will say this. That easement sale was the cleanest transaction I have ever done. You paid cash, you recorded the deed same day, and you never once asked me to keep it quiet. If Daniel did not know you owned that corridor, that is because he did not bother to check the county records. He thought it was still yours, I said. He thought the informal arrangement transferred with ownership when you inherited. Raymond made a low sound of agreement. A lot of people think that way, especially families that have been here long enough to remember when a handshake was a contract. But the law does not care what people assume. It cares what is recorded. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat with that timeline. Daniel received written notice in March that the informal access was ending. He had 90 days to secure an alternative. He did nothing. In July, he showed up angry and surprised when construction started. In August of last year, Raymond had offered to sell him the easement for $50,000. Daniel ignored the offer. And now, in September of this year, his attorney was calling me offering $100,000 for the same corridor. That was not negotiation. That was panic masked as business. I pulled the file on Daniel's organic certification. The USDA National Organic Program requires continuous operation and annual recertification. Any lapse in access that prevents harvest, delivery, or inspection triggers a review. If the review finds operational interruption, the certification suspends. And once suspended, reinstatement requires a full 3-year transition period starting from scratch. Daniel's certification had been active since 2007. 11 years of premium pricing, specialty markets, and buyer relationships built on that organic label. If he lost it, he lost the contracts. If he lost the contracts, he lost the operation. The forward commitments were due for delivery starting in October. That was 3 weeks away. I opened my email and typed a message to Patricia Chen. Patricia had been my divorce attorney. She was 42 years old, sharp as a surveyor's transit, and had zero patience for sentiment. Her office was in Hartford, 2 hours from the farm, and she used a red fountain pen for deed signatures because she said it made people read the terms before they signed. I trusted her completely. The email was brief. I attached the easement deed, the tax records, the timeline of Raymond's notifications, and Marcus Holt's voicemail, offering $100,000. Then I wrote, Patricia, I need you to review the attached and advise on the following scenario. My ex-husband needs to purchase this easement to maintain access to the farm he received in our divorce. His attorney has offered $100,000. I am considering a counteroffer of $750,000, which is half the current farm valuation. Please confirm whether this price is legally defensible and whether I have any obligation to negotiate below market value given our prior marital relationship. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. The office was quiet. Outside my window, Millbrook's Main Street carried its usual Monday traffic. A mail truck, a school bus, the ordinary machinery of a county seat that had been conducting land business since 1747. My phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. Reviewing now. Can you talk at 2? I confirmed. At exactly 2 p.m., my desk phone rang. Patricia did not waste time. Sarah, she said, You have no legal obligation to sell this easement at all, let alone at a discount. The property is yours. The deed is recorded. And based on the timeline you sent, Daniel had ample opportunity to secure access through other means and chose not to. The fact that he is now in a crisis is not your legal problem. I know that, I said. But I want to make sure the $750,000 figure is defensible if this goes to court. It is defensible, Patricia said. But let me be clear. It is also punitive. You are pricing the easement at half the farm's current value, which means you are effectively saying that access to the county road is worth half of everything he owns. A court might view that as retaliatory. Is it illegal? No, you are within your rights to name any price you want. But if Daniel refuses and tries to claim you are acting in bad faith to sabotage his operation, you need to be prepared to demonstrate a legitimate valuation basis. The easement controls access to a $1.4 million operation, I said. Without it, the farm is landlocked and functionally worthless. I am pricing the corridor at exactly what it is worth to the only buyer who needs it. That is market value. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That is a defensible argument. But Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Is this about the money, or is this about making him pay for what he did during the marriage?" I did not answer immediately. I thought about the affair. I thought about the 17 years I spent building that farm's value while Daniel took credit for the soil and the weather and the organic certification I had mapped and defended through 3 USDA audits. I thought about the $340,000 buyout he offered me, framed as generosity, as if I had not been the one who saved the operation from bankruptcy in 2003 when the flood took out the South Fields and I filed the FEMA appeal that recovered $180,000. I thought about Emma Talbot, who now slept in the house I had insulated and renovated, who co-signed loans on equity E had built, who called herself a partner in a business she had not carried for 2 decades. And I thought about the easement deed, purchased 30 days before the divorce finalized, recorded in my name alone, a 60-foot corridor of absolute geographic power that I had never mentioned, because Daniel never asked. "Patricia," I said quietly, "this is about the money. But the money represents something he never wanted to acknowledge. I built that farm. I documented the boundaries. I filed the appeals. I saved the operation more than once. And when he bought me out, he treated my contributions like a favor he was doing me by letting me leave. So now I am treating his access like a favor I might do him, if he pays what it is worth." Patricia made a sound of understanding. "Then send the counteroffer. Make it formal. Include a 45-day closing deadline tied to his harvest schedule. And Sarah?" "Yes? Document everything. Every call, every email, every conversation. If this turns into litigation, you want a record that shows you conducted yourself as a business person, not a scorned ex-wife." "I always document everything," I said. "I know you do," Patricia replied. "That is why you are going to win." I ended the call and opened the counteroffer document. $750,000, cash only, closing within 45 days, non-negotiable. I attached the deed, the tax assessment, and a brief cover letter stating that the price reflected the easement's value to the landlocked parcel it served. Then I sent it to Marcus Holt with a read receipt enabled. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m., Monday, September 24th. I did not expect a response that day, but I got one. At 4:15 p.m., Marcus called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was tight, formal. The old boy rural law practice formality stretched thin over something close to alarm. "Ms. Kincaid, this is Marcus Holt. I have received your counterproposal. I need to schedule a call with you and my client to discuss terms. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to arrange a meeting time." I saved the voicemail and played it twice, listening for subtext. He did not say the price was unreasonable. He did not threaten legal action. He said he needed to discuss terms. That meant Daniel had not rejected the offer outright. That meant he was trying to find a way to pay. I pulled the county clerk's loan records for the farm. Daniel's mortgage had been paid off in 2009. The property carried no liens except for a small equipment loan through the local credit union, co-signed by Emma Talbot, taken out in 2016. So the farm had equity, but equity was not cash, and cash was what I required. If Daniel wanted to pay $750,000, he would need to either sell part of the operation, take out a new mortgage, or find an investor willing to front the money in exchange for ownership stake. Any of those options would take time, and time was the one thing his forward contracts did not give him. I opened a new document and started drafting a timeline. September 24th, counteroffer sent. October 15th, first delivery deadline for forward contracts. November 8th, final delivery deadline for fall harvest commitments. December 31st, annual organic certification inspection. If Daniel could not access the fields, he could not harvest. If he could not harvest, he could not deliver. If he could not deliver, the contracts canceled. And if the contracts canceled, the organic certification review would document operational interruption. The math was simple. He had 3 weeks to find $750,000, or he had to walk away from $890,000 in revenue and lose the certification that made the farm worth $1.4 million in the first place. I saved the timeline and leaned back. Outside, the light was starting to fade. The county office buildings across the street glowed amber in the late September sun. Millbrook had been my home base for 23 years. I had surveyed half the parcels in this region. I knew the soil maps, the flood zones, the property lines, and the quiet failures of families who thought tradition was stronger than law. The Merrick family had farmed that land since 1947. 71 years of roots and soil and the kind of pride that mistakes longevity for permanence. Daniel's father had maintained the handshake easement with Raymond's father because both men understood that neighborly arrangements were how rural communities survived. But Raymond's father was dead, and so was Daniel's, and I was not neighborly. I was a county surveyor who had spent 2 decades learning that unrecorded promises do not survive the people who made them. I closed my laptop and locked the office. The drive home took 40 minutes. I lived in a small house on the edge of Millbrook. 3 bedrooms, decent land, nothing fancy. The mortgage was manageable, the property lines were recorded, and I had never once needed to ask anyone for access to my own front door. That night I made dinner, reviewed the easement deed one more time, and waited for Marcus Holt to call back with a meeting time. He did not call that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Silence, I had learned, was its own kind of answer. I waited 3 weeks before Daniel called me directly. The interval felt strategic on his end, long enough to suggest he was not panicking, short enough to signal that Marcus Holt had failed to close the deal at the price Daniel could afford. I knew what those 3 weeks looked like because I had lived through similar calculations myself. You run the numbers. You call the banks. You talk to the credit union where your family has held accounts since 1974. You mention the word easement and watch loan officers' expressions harden. You learn that land you cannot access is not collateral. A lender wants to touch. I was at my desk in Millbrook when my phone vibrated on October 14th. The caller ID read Daniel Merrick. Not Marcus, not the farm office line, his personal cell. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. Control in negotiation is measured in seconds of delay. Sarah. His voice carried the particular flatness of someone who had rehearsed this conversation multiple times. We need to talk. I did not ask about what. I did not fill the silence with pleasantries. I adjusted my survey maps and said, I am available to talk now. Not on the phone. He paused. The pause felt expensive. I want to meet in person. Neutral location. You pick the place. I considered this. A neutral location meant he wanted witnesses or recording capability. It also meant he was trying to shift the power dynamic by framing the meeting as mutual negotiation rather than his emergency. I glanced at my calendar. The first forward contract delivery deadline was October 15th, tomorrow. If he was calling me today, it meant he had not secured financing. It meant he had not found an alternative route. It meant the trap had closed exactly as the geography dictated it would. The county mediation office in Ashford, I said. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Bring Marcus if you want legal counsel present. I will bring Patricia Chen. I don't need lawyers for this conversation. Then you are not serious about resolving the access issue. I kept my tone neutral. If you want to discuss easement terms, you bring documentation. If you want to ask me for charity, you can do that over the phone right now and save us both the drive. The line went quiet. I could hear him breathing. The quality of the silence told me he was alone. No Emma coaching from the next room, no Marcus advising patients. Just Daniel in whatever space he had retreated to, calculating whether anger would serve him better than humility. 10 tomorrow, he said finally. I will bring Marcus. He hung up before I could confirm. I set the phone down and opened my email. Patricia Chen had already sent me 3 messages in the past week, each one meticulously documenting the legal boundaries of my position. The most recent one included a subject line that read, "He will try to reframe your price as vindictive. Do not engage that narrative." I called her office. She answered on the second ring. "He wants to meet tomorrow at 10, I said. "County mediation office." Good. Patricia's voice carried the brisk satisfaction of someone who had predicted this move. He is out of time and out of options. The October 15th delivery deadline is forcing him into visibility. What do you want to accomplish in this meeting? I thought about that question. What did I want? The farm was worth $1,400,000 as a functioning organic operation. Daniel had $890,000 in forward contracts at risk. Emma Talbot had filed a homestead exemption claiming the farmhouse as her primary residence, which meant she believed she had a future there. Raymond Voss, Jr. had built a winery development on the neighboring parcel, which meant the informal access arrangement was never coming back. And I owned the only 60-foot corridor that connected Daniel's 240 acres to the county road. I want to see what he offers, I said. Patricia made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. He will offer you emotion, guilt, shared history, the memory of what you built together. Do not accept payment in sentiment. I never have. Good. I will meet you there at 9:45. Do not arrive early. Let him sit in that beige conference room and count the ceiling tiles while he waits. I arrived at the county mediation office at 9:58. The building was single-story institutional architecture, built in the 1980s when municipal budgets still funded neutral spaces for people to resolve property disputes without courtroom drama. The parking lot held 6 vehicles. I recognized Marcus Holt's silver Buick in the far corner. Daniel's truck was parked 2 spaces from the entrance. Patricia Chen was waiting by the glass doors. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a leather portfolio that matched her red fountain pen. She did not smile when she saw me. Patricia did not waste expressions on reassurance. They have been inside for 12 minutes, she said. Marcus requested the conference room with the window facing the parking lot. He wants you to see them waiting. It is a small psychological play. Ignore it. We walked through the lobby. The receptionist directed us to conference room B. I could see Daniel through the window before I opened the door. He was sitting with his back to the parking lot, hands folded on the table. Marcus sat beside him, briefcase open, legal pad covered in notes. They both looked up when I entered. Daniel looked older. That was the first thing I noticed. Not dramatically aged, but weathered in the way farmers get when stress compounds with physical labor. His hands showed soil under the nails, even though he had clearly scrubbed them before this meeting. His shirt was pressed, but not new. He met my eyes for 2 seconds, and then looked at the table. Marcus stood. Sarah, Patricia, thank you for making the time. Patricia set her portfolio on the table and remained standing. Let us be clear about why we are here. My client owns the access easement. Your client needs to purchase it. The price is $750,000, terms previously communicated. If you have a counteroffer, present it now. Marcus glanced at Daniel. The glance carried weight. It said, "This is the moment we discussed. This is where you deploy the strategy we agreed on." Daniel cleared his throat. "Sarah, I am not here to argue about the price." His voice was quiet, controlled. "I am here to ask you to reconsider the situation from a perspective that includes more than property law." I sat down. Patricia remained standing behind me. I folded my hands on the table and waited. Daniel continued. "You and I built that farm together. I know the divorce settlement gave me the deed, but you know as well as I do that your work made the operation viable. The FEMA appeal in 2003 saved us $180,000. Your rezoning applications, your flood zone mapping, your buffer documentation, all of that created the organic certification that makes this farm worth what it is worth today. I am not disputing your contribution." I listened. He was using the script Marcus had prepared. Acknowledge her value. Establish shared history. Pivot to mutual benefit. "What I am asking," Daniel said, "is that you recognize the farm supports more than just me. Emma and I employ 12 people. Those are families who depend on this operation. We have forward contracts worth $890,000 that we cannot fulfill without access to the county road. The October 15th deadline is tomorrow. If I cannot make that delivery, the contracts cancel. The organic certification review happens December 31st. If the operation is interrupted, we lose 11 years of certification and face a 3-year reinstatement period." He paused. I did not fill the silence. "I am asking you to sell me the easement at a price I can actually pay," he said. "Not as a favor, as a business transaction that reflects market value rather than punitive positioning." Patricia leaned forward. "What is your offer?" Marcus opened his briefcase and removed a folder. He slid it across the table. "We are prepared to offer $340,000 for the easement, cash closing within 30 days. The price matches the divorce buyout Sarah received in 2016. It represents a 1,214% return on the $28,000 she paid Raymond Voss Jr. for the corridor in 2015. I opened the folder. The offer was typed on Marcus Holt's letterhead. Standard purchase agreement. Earnest money deposit of $25,000. Closing contingent on Daniel securing financing from First National Bank. I read every line. Patricia stood behind me, silent. When I finished reading, I closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. "No," I said. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Sarah, be reasonable." "I am being perfectly reasonable. You are offering me the same amount you paid me 3 years ago to walk away from a farm I helped build. You are asking me to accept a price that allows you to keep an operation worth $1,400,000, while I receive less than the equity I was owed in the first place. That is not market value. That is asking me to subsidize your access crisis." Marcus cleared his throat. "Sarah, the $750,000 price is not defensible as fair market value. Comparable easement purchases in this county over the past 5 years average between $30,000 and $80,000. Your counteroffer is 10 times the high end of that range." Patricia spoke for the first time. "Comparable easements do not determine market value when there is only one buyer and one seller. My client owns the only access corridor to a landlocked 240-acre organic farm. The value of that corridor is not what other easements cost. It is what this specific farm will lose without it. $890,000 in forward contracts, 11 years of organic certification, 12 employees' livelihoods, a homestead exemption Emma Talbot filed claiming the farmhouse as her primary residence. The price reflects the cost of losing access, not the cost of gravel and fencing." Marcus opened his mouth to respond. Daniel cut him off. "You want me to lose the farm?" His voice was flat, accusatory. "That is what this is about. You want me to fail so you can feel like you won something in the divorce." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I met in 1998 at an agricultural extension workshop. The man who needed help filing a FEMA appeal and did not have the technical language to navigate federal paperwork. The man who accepted my surveying income to fund farm modernization and then built a narrative where the farm's success was evidence of his family's generational expertise rather than my invisible labor. "I do not want you to lose the farm," I said quietly. "I want you to pay me what the access is worth to you. If that price is more than you can afford, that is not vindictiveness. That is geography." Daniel stood. The chair scraped against the linoleum. "You know I cannot get financing for $750,000. You know the banks will not lend against a landlocked property. You designed this trap deliberately. I purchased the easement 3 years ago," I said. "I did not create your access crisis. Raymond Voss Jr. created it when he terminated the informal arrangement his father maintained with your father for 90 years. I simply declined to solve your problem for free. You bought the easement 30 days before the divorce finalized." Daniel's voice rose. "You hid it from me during settlement. You let me take the farm thinking I had full access. That is fraud." Patricia stepped forward. "My client had no legal obligation to disclose her separate property purchases during divorce proceedings. The easement was never marital property. It was acquired with her separate income and recorded under her name alone. Your attorney had the same access to county land records that everyone else has. If you failed to verify access before accepting the farm deed, that is not fraud. That is negligence. Marcus closed his briefcase. This meeting is not productive. Then make a productive offer, Patricia said. My client's price is $750,000. If you cannot meet it, we will schedule a follow-up meeting when you have a revised proposal. Daniel stared at me. His hands were shaking. I could see the tremor in his fingers as he gripped the back of the chair. I met with a developer last week. He offered $520,000 for the landlocked farm. I could sell it today and walk away with enough to buy a smaller operation somewhere else. Is that what you want? You want me to lose everything my family built since 1947 so you can make a point about equity? I felt something shift in my chest. Not guilt, not satisfaction. Just the cold recognition that the trap had closed exactly as the math predicted it would. A landlocked 240-acre organic farm was worth $520,000 to a developer who could afford to wait years for access, litigation, or zoning variances. That same farm with access was worth $1,400,000. The difference between those two numbers was the price of the 60-foot corridor I owned. If you sell to the developer, I said, you will receive $520,000. You will lose the forward contracts. You will lose the organic certification. You will lose the homestead Emma filed. You will lose everything you built on my surveying work and my FEMA appeals and my rezoning applications. If you pay me $750,000 for the easement, you keep the farm. You keep the contracts. You keep the certification. You keep the future you told everyone you built with your own hands. I cannot get $750,000, Daniel said. His voice cracked. You know I cannot. Then you have a choice to make, I said. Sell to the developer for $520,000 and walk away. Or find a way to meet my price and keep the farm your family has operated since 1947. Marcus stood. We need to consult with our client. This meeting is over. Patricia collected her portfolio. I stood. Daniel remained by the chair, staring at the table. I walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back. The October 15th deadline is tomorrow, I said. If you miss that delivery, the contracts start canceling. You have until June 15th to secure access before I install a locked gate on the easement. That is 90 days from the date Raymond Voss Jr. terminated the informal arrangement. After that, the corridor is physically closed. You can bring me a revised offer any time before then. I left the conference room. Patricia followed. We walked through the lobby in silence. When we reached the parking lot, she stopped. He will not find the money, she said. I know. He will try to negotiate down. He will bring Emma to the next meeting. She will cry. She will talk about the employees and the homestead and the community impact. Marcus will present a revised offer somewhere between $340,000 and $500,000. They will frame it as compromise. And I will say no. Patricia studied me. What is your goal here, Sarah? If the goal is to force him to pay $750,000, you need to understand he may choose to sell to the developer instead. If the goal is to acquire the farm yourself, you need to make that clear now so I can structure the strategy. Accordingly, I looked across the parking lot. Daniel's truck was still there. I could see him through the conference room window, sitting alone at the table. Marcus had left the room, probably calling someone, probably running the numbers one more time to see if there was a financing structure that could work. I want him to understand what it cost me to build that farm, I said. I want him to sit in a bank office and hear a loan officer explain that his equity is not liquid. I want him to call every family member and every investor and every lender in 3 counties and hear them say no. I want him to realize that the access he took for granted for 90 years was never guaranteed. It was a handshake agreement that died with the generation that made it. And then I want him to sell to the developer for $520,000 and know that he walked away with less than I could have paid him if he had acknowledged my contributions when it mattered. Patricia nodded slowly. You have a number in mind. I do. Higher than the developer's offer? Yes. You are going to let him exhaust every option first. Yes. That is a long game. He has until June 15th. That is 8 months. I have been playing this game for 3 years, I said. I can wait 8 more months. Patricia opened her car door. I will draft contingency documents. If he comes back with a revised offer, I will respond within 48 hours. If he sells to the developer, I will prepare a counteroffer for you to submit before closing. Either way, you own the access. He owns nothing without it." She drove away. I sat in my car and watched Daniel through the conference room window. He was on his phone. The conversation looked tense. Short sentences, long pauses. He ran his hand through his hair. He stood. He paced. He sat back down. I started my engine and drove back to Millbrook. That night, I received an email from Raymond Voss, Jr. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." The body of the email was 2 sentences. "Daniel called me this afternoon asking if I would reconsider selling him an easement across my property. I told him the winery development has already poured foundation and the access corridor is blocked by permanent structures." I read the email twice. Then I forwarded it to Patricia with no comment. The next morning, October 15th, I was in my office reviewing a subdivision plat when my phone rang. The caller ID read Emma Talbot. I let it ring 3 times, then I answered. "Sarah." Her voice was tight, controlled. "I need to talk to you about the easement situation." "I am listening." "Daniel told me about the meeting yesterday. He told me you are asking $750,000 for access. That price is not realistic." "You know it is not realistic. We cannot secure financing for that amount against a landlocked property. The banks will not touch it." "Then you have a financing problem," I said. "That is separate from the easement price." "Sarah, please." The control in her voice cracked. "This is not just about Daniel. I have a homestead exemption on the farmhouse. I moved my entire life to that property. I left my restaurant partnership in the city. I co-signed on the equipment loans. If the farm fails, I lose everything too." I set down my pen. "You co-signed on loans for a landlocked farm without verifying access?" "We had access. We had the same access the Merrick family has had since 1947. You had an informal arrangement that Raymond Voss, Jr. terminated in March. He sent Daniel's certified notice. Daniel ignored it. That is not my problem. He did not ignore it. He never received it. The notice went to the farm office. We were traveling that week. By the time we saw the letter, the 90-day termination window had already started. I pulled up my email and found the timeline Raymond had sent me. Certified notice sent March 15th. 90-day termination effective June 15th. Today was October 15th, 7 months later. If Emma was calling me now, it meant they had exhausted every other option. "What do you want, Emma?" "I want you to accept a reasonable offer. Daniel proposed $340,000. That is fair market value based on comparable easements in this county. It gives you a substantial return on your $28,000 investment. It allows us to keep the farm operating and fulfill our forward contracts. Everyone wins." "I do not win," I said quietly. "I received the same buyout I accepted in 2016 to walk away from a farm I built. That is not a win. That is me subsidizing your access crisis so you can keep a homestead you filed after sleeping with my husband." The line went silent. I could hear her breathing. "This is not about the affair," she said finally. "This is about 12 employees who need their jobs. This is about $890,000 in forward contracts that feed families across 3 counties. This is about a farm that has operated for 71 years. You are using geography to destroy something that matters to more people than just Daniel. I am using geography to set a price that reflects what access is worth to you," I said. "If the farm matters that much, pay for it." "We cannot pay $750,000. You know we cannot." "Then sell to the developer for $520,000. Walk away. Find another farm. That is a choice." The developer offered $520,000 for the land. Daniel would walk away with nothing after paying off the equipment loans and settling with me for the homestead claim. You are not offering him a choice. You are offering him bankruptcy or surrender. I thought about that. Bankruptcy or surrender. Those were the only options geography left when access collapsed. I had not created the trap. I had simply purchased the corridor while everyone else assumed it would always be there. "My price is $750,000, I said. "If you find financing, call Patricia Chen. If you do not, I will see you at the next mediation meeting." I hung up. 2 hours later, Marcus Holt emailed Patricia a revised offer. $480,000. Financing contingent on a private lender who specialized in distressed agricultural properties. Closing within 60 days. Interest rate at 11%. Patricia forwarded the email to me with a single line of commentary. They found a predatory lender. This will destroy them even if they close. Recommend we decline and wait. I typed a reply, decline, no counter. That afternoon, I drove out to the farm. I did not go to the house. I did not contact Daniel. I parked on the county road and walked the 60-foot easement strip I had purchased 3 years earlier. The gravel was rutted from truck traffic. The fence posts were weathered. The corridor ran straight from the county road to the farm's main gate, bisecting what used to be Voss family pasture, and was now winery vineyard development. I stood at the county road end and looked toward the farm. I could see the equipment barns, the cathedral ceiling I had helped design, the organic certification plaque Daniel mounted by the main gate, the tractor he bought with money from a contract I had secured through my floodplain variance work. I had surveyed this land for 23 years. I knew every boundary, every setback, every easement, every access corridor in 3 counties. I knew which handshake agreements survived generation changes and which ones collapsed under the weight of a single real estate transaction. The Merrick farm had always depended on access it did not own. That dependence was invisible as long as the Voss family honored their father's arrangement. But handshake agreements do not appear on title reports. They do not survive probate. They do not transfer with deeds. Raymond Voss Jr. had offered to sell Daniel an easement for $50,000 in August 2017. Daniel ignored the offer. He assumed the access would always be there because it had always been there. That assumption was the architecture of his collapse. I walked back to my car and drove home. 3 days later, Patricia called. They withdrew the $480,000 offer, she said. Marcus sent me a 1-line email this morning. No explanation. Just, client has decided not to proceed with easement purchase at this time. Do you know why? I called Marcus. He would not give details, but I can guess. The predatory lender probably required Daniel to pledge the farm equipment as collateral. Emma probably refused to co-sign on a loan with 11% interest. They probably fought about it. And now, they are back to deciding between the developer's $520,000 offer and some other strategy we have not seen yet. I sat at my desk and stared at the survey maps on my wall. Boundaries drawn in red ink, easements marked in blue, access corridors highlighted in yellow. Every line represented a legal certainty that someone once assumed was negotiable. What happens next? I asked. We wait, Patricia said. They have until June 15th before you install the gate. That is 244 days. They will use that time to try everything. Family loans, private investors, selling off equipment to raise cash. They will try to negotiate you down. They will bring character witnesses to the next mediation. They will frame this as a community crisis. But the math does not change. They need access. You own it. The price is the price. I thanked her and ended the call. That night, I sat in my small house on the edge of Millbrook and thought about the locked gate I would install in 244 days. Steel construction, padlock, no trespassing signs. The physical closure of a corridor that had been open for 90 years. I thought about Daniel sitting in the equipment barn, running the same calculations I had run 3 years ago when I bought the easement. How much is access worth? What is the cost of assuming something will always be there? I thought about the farm I had helped build, the FEMA appeals, the rezoning applications, the buffer zone mapping, the flood variance work, the invisible technical labor that made organic certification possible. I thought about the $340,000 divorce buyout I accepted to walk away from property I had surveyed, documented, and defended for 17 years. And I thought about the price I had named, $750,000, half the farm's current value, the equity I was never offered, the acknowledgement I was never given. The number felt correct, not as revenge, not as punishment, just as math finally catching up. I called Patricia Chen at 8:42 p.m. on November 3rd. The office line rang 4 times before she picked up. I could hear traffic noise in the background. She was still at her desk in the city, 4 hours past normal business hours, the way she always worked when a case had teeth. I need you to walk me through something, I said. If Daniel loses organic certification, what happens to the forward contracts? Patricia did not ask why I was calling on a Saturday night. She just answered. They are void, she said. Organic certification is a material condition of the contracts. If he cannot deliver certified product, the buyers can cancel without penalty. He would forfeit the deposits and face potential breach of contract claims if they have downstream obligations. I sat at my kitchen table in Millbrook with a legal pad and 3 highlighters. I had spent the past 6 hours mapping Daniel's operational calendar against USDA organic certification requirements. "How long does he have?" I asked. Patricia paused. I heard papers rustling. "The USDA requires continuous operation for certification maintenance," she said. "If his access is cut and he cannot harvest, process, or deliver product for more than 90 days, the certifying agency will flag the operation for review. If the interruption exceeds 6 months, they typically revoke certification and require a 3-year reinstatement. Period." I wrote 90 days on the legal pad, then I wrote June 15th, 2019, then I calculated backward, March 7th. "What if he sells the farm before the certification lapses?" I asked. "Then the buyer inherits the certification," Patricia said, "but only if the operation continues without interruption. If there is even a week of downtime, the certification becomes worthless. And no buyer is going to close on a landlocked organic farm with no legal access." I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat in the kitchen and stared at the legal pad for 20 minutes. The trap was complete. Daniel just did not know it yet. On November 8th, Marcus Holt sent Patricia a formal letter withdrawing all previous offers and requesting a 30-day negotiation extension. Patricia forwarded it to me with a 2-word email. "Your call." I read the letter 3 times. The language was careful. Marcus did not explain why Daniel needed more time. He did not mention financing or investors. He just asked for breathing room. I wrote back to Patricia, decline the extension, remind him that I set a deadline of June 15th for gate installation. That gives Daniel 219 days. I am not shortening it, and I am not extending it. Patricia sent the response at 4:17 p.m. Marcus called her at 4:58 p.m. Patricia did not answer. He left a voicemail asking her to reconsider. She forwarded me the audio file. I deleted it without listening. On November 12th, Emma Talbot called me at 7:03 a.m. I was standing in my office reviewing a floodplain survey when my phone vibrated. I recognized her number from the October call. I let it ring 6 times before answering. "Sarah," Emma said. Her voice sounded thin, stretched. "I need 5 minutes." I did not say yes. I did not say no. I just waited. "I know you do not owe me anything," Emma said. "I know what Daniel did. I know what I did. But this is not just about us anymore. We have 12 people who depend on this farm for their income, families, kids in school. If you install that gate in June, they lose everything." I sat down at my desk. I picked up a pen and started writing on the legal pad. Timestamp, caller, summary. "I am not installing the gate in June," I said. "I am installing it on June 15th. If Daniel has not purchased the easement by then. He has had 219 days to secure financing. That is more time than most buyers get to close on a commercial property." Emma exhaled. It sounded like she had been holding her breath. "He cannot get financing," she said. "No bank will lend against a landlocked farm. The developer offer is the only real option, and if he takes it, there is nothing left after the equipment loan payoff and my homestead settlement." I wrote developer offer $520,000 on the legal pad. Then I wrote equipment loan payoff, then homestead settlement. "That is not my problem," I said. Emma was quiet for a long time. I could hear something in the background, machinery, voices. She was calling from the farm. "What do you want, Sarah?" she asked. "What is the number that makes you whole?" I looked at the legal pad. I had written $750,000 in the margin weeks ago, half the farm's current value. The number I had sent to Marcus in September. "I already told Marcus my price," I said. "It has not changed." Emma laughed. It was a bitter sound, sharp. "You know he cannot pay that," she said. "You know, there is no scenario where he comes up with $750,000 in 6 months. So what is this really about?" I set the pen down. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window at the empty street. "This is about property law," I said. "I own a 60-foot easement strip that controls access to a 240-acre farm. Daniel needs to buy it. I named my price. If he cannot afford it, he can sell the farm to someone who can." "You already took $340,000 in the divorce," Emma said. You walked away. Why are you doing this now? I did not answer. I just let the silence hang. Emma tried again. Her voice cracked. Please, Sarah, please, I am begging you. Name a price he can actually pay. We will find a way. We will sell equipment. We will take out another loan. Just give us something we can work with. I picked up the pen again. I wrote begging on the legal pad. Then I wrote no counteroffer. I gave Daniel a fair price, I said. If he does not want to pay it, he can take the developer's offer. That is not my concern. Emma was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing. He is going to lose everything, she said. I ended the call. Then I sat at my desk for 10 minutes staring at the legal pad. Then I called Patricia Chen. Patricia answered on the second ring. Emma Talbot just called me, I said. She asked me to name a price Daniel can actually pay. What did you say? Patricia asked. I said my price has not changed. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I heard her typing. Good, she said. Do not negotiate with her. Do not negotiate with Marcus. If Daniel wants to make a new offer, he can put it in writing through his attorney. I told Patricia about the 12 employees Emma mentioned, the families, the kids in school. That is an emotional appeal, Patricia said. It has nothing to do with the legal question. You own the easement. You set a price. Daniel either pays it or he does not. The economic impact on third parties is not your responsibility. I know, I said. But I could hear Emma's voice in my head. Please, Sarah, please. I hung up with Patricia and went back to the floodplain survey. On November 19th, Raymond Voss Jr. called me at 2:14 p.m. Sarah, Raymond said, I wanted to give you a heads up. Daniel came by the winery yesterday asking if I would reconsider selling him an alternate access route. I stopped typing mid-sentence. I had been drafting an easement description for a subdivision plat. I minimized the document and opened a blank notepad file. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him no, Raymond said. The foundation is poured. The tasting room frame goes up next week. There is no corridor left. Even if I wanted to sell him access, the construction has blocked the old path. I typed foundation poured on the notepad, then tasting room frame next week. How did he react? I asked. He asked if I would consider tearing out part of the foundation and rerouting the driveway, Raymond said. I told him that would cost $200 in construction delays and engineering changes. He said he would pay for it. I stopped typing. I leaned forward in my chair. What did you say? I asked. I said no, Raymond said. I am not ripping out a finished foundation to bail him out of a problem he created by ignoring my termination notice. I offered to sell him an easement for $50,000 back in August 2017. He never even responded. That is on him. I started typing again. Offered $50K August 2017, no response. Did he say anything else? I asked. Raymond sighed. He said you were forcing him into bankruptcy, Raymond said. He said you were using the easement to punish him for the divorce. He asked if I would talk to you on his behalf. I stopped typing. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And what did you say? I asked. I told him I sold you the easement in 2015, and what you do with it is your business, Raymond said. I told him I was not getting involved in whatever personal issues you two have. I told him to hire a real estate attorney and figure out his options. I wrote not getting involved on the notepad. Thank you for telling me, I said. Raymond paused. I could hear wind in the background. He was outside, probably walking the property. Sarah, Raymond said. I do not know what happened between you and Daniel. I do not need to know. But I want you to understand something. My dad made that handshake deal with the Merrick family in 1928, 90 years, 3 generations. Daniel assumed it would last forever because it always had. But unrecorded neighborly arrangements do not survive on title reports. They do not transfer in probate. They die with the people who made them. My dad died in 2014. The deal died with him. Daniel should have secured legal access the day he inherited that farm. He did not. That is not your fault. That is not my fault. That is his failure to understand how property law works. I closed the notepad file without saving it. Thank you, Raymond, I said. We ended the call. I sat at my desk and stared at the blank monitor for a long time. Then I opened the survey plat and went back to work. On December 2nd, Marcus Holt sent Patricia a new offer. $600,000, cash, 60-day close. Patricia forwarded it to me with a single-line email. Still short. I read the offer twice. Daniel had found $120,000 somewhere. Maybe he sold equipment. Maybe he found a private investor. Maybe Emma liquidated something. It did not matter. I wrote back to Patricia. Decline, no counter. Patricia sent the response at 11:47 a.m. Marcus called her at 12:03 p.m. This time Patricia answered. She put him on speaker and recorded the call. Patricia, Marcus said, I need you to talk to your client. $600,000 is a serious offer. It is $500,000 more than what Daniel initially offered. It shows good faith. It shows he is willing to pay a premium for access. Your client offered $100,000, Patricia said. My client countered at $750,000. This is still $150,000 short. Marcus exhaled. It sounded frustrated. You know he cannot get to $750,000, Marcus said. You know that number is designed to force a sale. You know Sarah is holding that easement hostage to collapse his operation. Patricia's voice went cold. My client owns the easement, Patricia said. She has no obligation to sell it at any price. The fact that she is willing to sell it at all is a courtesy. If your client cannot afford the price, he should accept the developer's offer and move on. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I did not expect. The developer pulled the offer, Marcus said. Patricia looked at the speakerphone. I could see her expression change even through the recording. When? Patricia asked. November 28th, Marcus said. They reviewed the title report and discovered the access issue. They will not close on a landlocked parcel. They said if Daniel can secure legal access, they will reconsider. But they are not buying a property with no road frontage. Patricia muted the line. She sent me a text. Developer offer is off the table. Daniel has no exit strategy. I stared at the text for a full minute. Then I wrote back, hold firm at $750,000. Patricia unmuted the line. My client's price stands, Patricia said. If your client cannot meet it, he can continue farming until June 15th. After that, access will be physically blocked. Marcus tried one more time. Patricia, he said, please, I have known Daniel's family for 30 years. His grandfather bought that farm in 1947. 4 generations. He has 12 employees. He has forward contracts he cannot fill. If you install that gate, you are destroying more than just his business. You are destroying his legacy. Patricia leaned toward the speakerphone. Then he should pay the asking price, Patricia said. She ended the call. Then she forwarded me the recording with a 3-word email. He is desperate. I listened to the recording twice. Then I archived it in a folder labeled Easement Negotiation. On December 14th, I drove to the farm. I did not call ahead. I did not tell Patricia. I just got in my car at 6:22 a.m. and drove 3 counties west through the cold December morning. I had not been back to the property since the October mediation. I had not walked the land since the day I signed the divorce papers in 2016, 2.5 years. I parked on the county road at 8:47 a.m. The morning was gray and still. Frost covered the fields. I could see the farmhouse in the distance. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home. I walked the 60-foot easement strip from the county road to the farm boundary. The gravel was packed down. Tire tracks marked the center. Daniel had been using the corridor every day for months, driving over land I owned, probably without thinking about it. Probably without remembering that I bought it. Probably without remembering that it was mine. I stood at the fence line and looked at the farm. The 240 acres stretched out in gentle slopes. The equipment barn stood against the eastern tree line. The greenhouse glowed faintly in the weak sunlight. I could see rows of winter cover crops in the near field. Rye and clover, Daniel's organic rotation system. I had designed that rotation in 2004. I had mapped the field drainage and calculated the nutrient cycling and filed the USDA paperwork that made it legal. Daniel had probably forgotten that too. I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and the windows fogging and wrote notes on the legal pad. Easement strip 60 feet wide. Gravel surface. Active use. Farm visible from County Road. No alternate access. Then I started the car and drove back to Millbrook. On December 20th, Emma Talbot called me again. It was 9:13 p.m. I was sitting in my living room with a book I was not reading and a glass of water I was not drinking. I answered on the 4th ring. Sarah, Emma said. I know you do not want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But I need you to listen. I set the book down. I picked up the legal pad from the coffee table. Go ahead, I said. Daniel is not sleeping, Emma said. He is not eating. He spends 12 hours a day on the phone trying to find financing. He has called every bank in the state. He has talked to private lenders, investment groups, farm credit unions. No one will touch a landlocked property. The organic certification inspection is in 11 days. If he cannot deliver product in the spring, the certifier will revoke his status. If that happens, the forward contracts are void. If the contracts are void, he has no income. If he has no income, he cannot make payroll. If he cannot make payroll, 12 families lose their jobs 2 weeks before Christmas. I wrote certification inspection December 31 on the legal pad. Emma kept talking. Her voice was shaking. I left my life for this, she said. I left my restaurant partnership in the city. I moved to the middle of nowhere. I co-signed loans. I filed a homestead exemption because I believed we were building something together. And now I am watching him fall apart because you will not negotiate. I underlined the word negotiate on the legal pad. I did negotiate, I said. I set a price. Daniel chose not to pay it. Emma laughed. It was a hollow sound. You set a price you knew he could not afford, she said. You engineered this whole situation. You bought that easement 3 years ago and waited for the perfect moment to use it. You are not negotiating. You are executing. I did not respond. Emma's voice dropped. It sounded tired. What do you want me to say, Sarah? She asked. Do you want me to apologize? Fine, I am sorry. I am sorry I slept with your husband. I am sorry I helped destroy your marriage. I am sorry for every choice I made that hurt you. Does that change anything? Does that make you lower your price? I looked at the legal pad. I had filled 3 pages with notes. Dates, dollar amounts, legal citations, conversation summaries. No, I said. Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I did not expect. He still loves you, she said. I stopped writing. He does not talk about it, Emma said. He does not say your name, but I see it. I see the way he looks at the greenhouse you designed. I see the way he uses the drainage maps you drew. I see the way he flinches every time someone mentions your surveying work. He knows what he lost. He knows what he threw away. And I think part of him believes that if he just finds the right words or the right offer, you will forgive him. I closed the legal pad. But you are not going to forgive him, Emma said. Are you? It was not a question. No, I said. Emma exhaled. Then just tell me one thing, she said. When you bought that easement in 2015, did you already know this would happen? Did you already know Raymond would terminate the informal access? Did you already know Daniel would be trapped? I thought about the question for a long time. Then I told her the truth. I knew the handshake arrangement would not survive Raymond's inheritance, I said. I knew unrecorded access agreements collapse when property transfers. I knew Daniel would need legal access eventually. I bought the easement because I understood what he did not. Property law does not care about tradition. It cares about deeds. So yes, Emma said, you knew. I knew it was possible, I said. Emma made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You are going to take everything from him, she said. Aren't you? I opened the legal pad again. I looked at the timeline I had written. 1998 to 2018. 20 years. Daniel took everything from me first, I said. He just did not notice. I ended the call. Then I sat in the living room for 2 hours staring at the legal pad and thinking about the day I signed the divorce. Papers, and walked away from the farm with $340,000 and a 60-foot strip of gravel that no one else thought mattered. On January 2nd, Marcus Holt sent Patricia a final offer. $750,000. Contingent financing. 120-day close. Patricia forwarded it to me at 9:22 a.m. I read the offer 3 times. Daniel had met my price, but the financing was contingent, which meant he did not have the money yet. Which meant he was asking me to wait another 4 months while he tried to secure a loan that no bank would approve. I called Patricia at 9:35 a.m. Decline, I said. Cash only, no contingencies. Patricia paused. Sarah, she said, he met your number. With contingent financing, I said. I do not trust him to close. I want cash or certified funds. No exceptions. Patricia was quiet. If you reject this, she said, he has no moves left. I know, I said. Patricia sent the rejection at 9:58 a.m. Marcus called her at 10:14 a.m. Patricia let it go to voicemail. She forwarded me the message. Marcus sounded tired, defeated. Patricia, Marcus said, please tell Sarah that Daniel accepts her terms. He will find a way to make this work. He just needs time. Please, give him until June. Give him a chance to save the farm. Patricia deleted the voicemail. Then she texted me, he is done. I texted back, good. Then I opened my laptop and started drafting a new document. An offer to purchase, not the easement. The farm. I drafted the purchase offer on January 8th, 2 days after I rejected Marcus Holt's contingent financing proposal. The document was 3 pages. Page 1 outlined the financial terms. Page 2 listed the property boundaries and included parcels. Page 3 contained a single paragraph I had rewritten 11 times. The paragraph required Daniel Merrick to acknowledge in writing that Sarah Kincaid's technical contributions between 1998 and 2015 had been foundational to the farm's organic certification, regulatory compliance, and current operational value. The language was precise. It did not demand an apology. It did not require emotional contrition. It simply asked him to state on a recorded document what he had refused to acknowledge during 17 years of marriage and 2 years of divorce litigation. I printed the offer at my office in Millbrook on county letterhead. The cash price was $580,000. No financing contingency, no inspection period, no appraisal requirement, 30-day close. The farm was worth $400,000 as a functioning organic operation with reliable access to County Road 47. As a landlocked parcel with no recorded easement and a collapsing certification, it was worth whatever the only buyer, willing to pay cash, could offer. I was the only buyer. I called Patricia Chen at 9:15 that morning. She answered on the second ring. Send it, she said. I asked if the acknowledgement paragraph created enforceability issues. It is a contract term, Patricia said. He can accept or decline. If he signs, it becomes part of the recorded deed transfer. Not legally complex, emotionally devastating maybe. But you are not required to make this easy for him. I faxed the offer to Marcus Holt at 10:47 a.m. I did not call first. I did not send a courtesy email. The cover sheet listed my attorney's contact information and noted that the offer expired in 72 hours. Marcus called Patricia at 2:30 p.m. She conferenced me in without warning. Ms. Chen, Marcus said, my client needs time to review this proposal with his business partner. Your client has 72 hours, Patricia said. The clock started when my fax machine confirmed delivery at 10:49 this morning. The price is lower than the previous developer offer, Marcus said. The developer withdrew their offer on November 28th, Patricia said. You told us that yourself. There is no competing bid. Your client is welcome to decline and wait for another buyer. But Ms. Kincaid is under no obligation to extend this timeline. There was a long pause. I could hear Marcus breathing into the phone. The acknowledgement language on page 3, he said. That is punitive. It is a factual statement, Patricia said. Your client is free to dispute its accuracy. But if he signs the purchase agreement, he agrees the statement is true. Standard contract law. This will destroy him, Marcus said. His words hung in the air between us. I did not respond. Patricia did not respond. After 11 seconds, Marcus exhaled and said he would present the offer to Daniel and call back within 48 hours. The line went dead. I stood at my office window and looked out at the flat gray afternoon. January in Millbrook is the color of waiting. I had been waiting for 3 years. I could wait 72 more hours. Marcus called Patricia on January 10th at 4:17 p.m. Daniel wanted to meet in person before signing. Patricia told him the offer was non-negotiable and did not require a meeting. Marcus said his client needed to speak with me directly, just once, just for closure. Patricia asked if I was willing. I said yes. We scheduled the meeting for January 11th at 10 a.m. at the county mediation office in Ashford. Same location as our October negotiation. Same institutional beige walls. Same long table with the fake wood veneer surface. I arrived early and sat in the parking lot reviewing my notes. I had documented every number, every timeline, every contribution, the 2003 FEMA appeal that saved $180,000, the rezoning work, the buffer zone mapping, the compliance filings. I did not need the notes anymore. I had memorized them years ago. but holding the folder in my hands steadied something inside me that had been unsteady since 1998. Daniel arrived at 9:58 a.m. He parked 3 spaces away and sat in his truck for 2 full minutes before getting out. When he walked toward the building, I saw how thin he had become. His jacket hung loose on his shoulders. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets. He looked like a man who had not slept in weeks. We met in the same conference room. Patricia sat to my left. Marcus sat across from us with an empty chair beside him. Daniel stood in the doorway for a moment, then sat down slowly. He looked at me for the first time in 3 months. I did not look away. "Sarah," he said. I waited. "I read your offer," he said. I read the acknowledgement language. I folded my hands on the table and said nothing. "You want me to sign a statement saying you built this farm," he said. "That everything I have came from you. I want you to sign a statement saying my technical contributions were foundational to the farm's development," I said. "That is not the same thing." "It feels the same," he said. "Feelings are not admissible in property law," Patricia said. Daniel looked at her, then back at me. His jaw tightened. "I cannot do this," he said. "I cannot sign that and still call myself a farmer." "Then decline the offer," I said. "Wait for another buyer." "There is no other buyer," he said. "You know that. You have made sure of it." "I made sure of nothing," I said. "I purchased a 60-foot easement strip from Raymond Voss Jr. for $28,000 in 2015. I recorded the deed. You received the farm in the divorce because you wanted it, and I did not fight you. Those are the facts." "You waited," he said. "You knew Raymond was going to terminate the informal arrangement. You knew I would be landlocked. You set this up. I documented a property transaction," I said. "What you assumed about access was your responsibility to verify." He leaned forward and his voice dropped. "I loved you," he said. The room went quiet. Even Marcus looked uncomfortable. Patricia did not move. I kept my hands folded and my gaze level. "You loved the farm," I said. "You loved the idea of being a 4th-generation farmer. You loved the organic certification and the forward contracts and the reputation. You did not love me. You loved what I could do for you as long as I stayed quiet about it." "That is not fair," he said. "Fair would have been acknowledging my FEMA appeal during the divorce," I said. "Fair would have been splitting the farm equity based on contributions instead of inheritance. Fair would have been recognizing that I spent 17 years making your dream possible while you told people at extension workshops that you built it yourself." Daniel's face went pale. He looked at Marcus. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "We have a counter-proposal," Marcus said. "No," Patricia said. "The offer is final." "Just hear us out," Marcus said. "Daniel is willing to pay Ms. Kincaid $750,000 for the easement. He will secure financing through a private lender at 15% interest. The transaction closes in 60 days. No acknowledgement required." I looked at Daniel. He would not meet my eyes. "You are offering to pay me $750,000 for a corridor I purchased for $28,000, I said, "using predatory financing. To avoid signing one paragraph, it is about principle," Marcus said. "Principle," I repeated. I stood up. Patricia glanced at me but did not move. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. My survey equipment was locked in my truck. Daniel's truck was parked beside it. The Merrick family had farmed that land since 1947, 71 years, 4 generations. And none of them had taught him to read a deed. I turned back to the table. "No," I said. "Sarah," Marcus started. "The offer expires in 14 hours, I said. "Cash purchase at $580,000 with the acknowledgement language, or I walk away and you wait for the next buyer. Those are the terms." I sat down. Patricia closed her folder. Marcus looked at Daniel. Daniel stared at the table. "Can I have until tomorrow morning?" Daniel asked. "The offer expires at midnight tonight," Patricia said. "Please," Daniel said, "just a few more hours." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had married in 1998 believed he was restoring something his great-grandfather had built. He wore that belief like a birthright. But the farm he thought he inherited had been held together by my certifications, my filings, my appeals, my technical precision. He had never asked how the infrastructure worked. He had never questioned who maintained the relationships with the county planning office or who tracked the regulatory deadlines. He had assumed it was simply the land providing for him the way it had provided for his father and grandfather before him. He had assumed wrong. "Midnight," I said. We left the mediation office at 10:34 a.m. Patricia walked me to my truck. "He will sign," she said. "I know," I said. Marcus called Patricia at 11:47 p.m. on January 11th. Daniel accepted the offer, all terms, including the acknowledgement. The closing was scheduled for February 8th at Patricia's office. I spent the intervening weeks preparing the transition documents. Raymond Voss, Jr. sent me an email on January 15th asking if I planned to continue organic production. I told him I had not decided. He said the winery tasting room was framed and they were scheduling a spring opening. He asked if I wanted to coordinate on a farm-to-table partnership. I thanked him and said I would let him know. Emma Talbot called me on January 22nd. Her voice was flat, drained. "I am leaving," she said. I did not ask where. "I co-signed the equipment loan," she said. "The bank is releasing me from the note as part of the sale. Daniel is paying me $12,000 for my homestead claim and my business equity. That is all that is left after everything collapsed. I am sorry," I said. "No, you are not," she said. "But that is okay. I would not be sorry either." She hung up. The certification lapsed on December 31st. Daniel had missed the annual inspection because he could not operate the farm without access to County Road 47. The USDA sent him a formal revocation notice on January 9th. Reinstatement would require 3 years of continuous organic operation and a full reinspection process. The forward contracts had been canceled in November when he could not make delivery. The $890,000 in buyer commitments evaporated. He forfeited the deposits. My contractor installed the locked gate on the easement on March 21st, 91 days after the confrontation in Ashford. Exactly as I had promised, the gate was steel, 8 feet tall, chain and padlock. A small sign on the front read, "Private property, no trespassing. Easement owner, S. Kincaid." Daniel did not call. He did not protest. He simply began packing. The closing took 47 minutes. Daniel signed the deed transfer. He signed the acknowledgement. He did not look at me. When Patricia handed him the cashier's check for $500, he folded it once and put it in his jacket pocket without examining the amount. Marcus shook Patricia's hand and said it had been a difficult process. Patricia said property transactions often are. Daniel stood and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame and turned back. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked. I looked at him. His face was older than I remembered. The lines around his eyes had deepened. His shoulders sagged. "I have not decided yet," I said. He nodded once and left. Patricia waited until the door closed, then handed me the recorded deed. The acknowledgement was on page 4, paragraph 9. I read it 3 times. Daniel Merrick acknowledges that Sarah Kincaid's technical expertise in land surveying, regulatory compliance, floodplain management, and property boundary documentation between 1998 and 2015 was foundational to the development and certification of the organic farming operation on the property described herein, and that said, contributions materially increased the operational and market value of the property. It was signed, dated, notarized. I folded the deed and put it in my briefcase. "You paid him $580,000, Patricia said. "He paid you $340,000 in the divorce. You reversed the settlement and acquired the entire operation." "Yes," I said. "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought about that question for a long time. I thought about the 23 years I had spent measuring invisible lines and documenting assumptions people never bothered to verify. I thought about the 17 years I had spent building infrastructure Daniel believed his inheritance had provided. I thought about the leather notebook where I had recorded every unacknowledged contribution, every erasure. Every moment I had been treated as interchangeable with the land itself, useful, invisible, expected. "It feels," I said, "like the numbers finally caught up." I drove to the farm on February 10th. The fields were frozen. The equipment barns stood empty. The house where Emma had filed her homestead claim was dark. I parked on County Road 47 and walked the 60-foot easement strip. The locked gate stood at the far end. My boot prints in the snow were the only tracks. I had purchased this corridor for $28,000 in 2015, while Daniel was finalizing his affair with Emma and negotiating to buy me out of a farm I had spent 17 years making viable. I had recorded the deed 30 days before the divorce became final. I had not told him. I had not needed to. Property law does not require disclosure of separately held assets in an uncontested dissolution. He had assumed the access would always exist because it always had. I had documented the boundaries. I stood at the gate and looked back toward the farm. 240 acres, certified organic until December 31st. Forward contracts worth $890,000 canceled. Equipment loans paid off. Emma gone, Daniel gone. The Merrick family's 71-year tenure ended. I owned it now, not through inheritance, not through marriage, through patient transformation of erasure into acquisition. The wind moved across the empty fields. I pulled my survey jacket tighter and walked back to my truck. The deed was in my briefcase. The acknowledgement was recorded. The numbers had been corrected. I was 47 years old. I had been a county land surveyor for 23 years. I measured property lines for a living. I documented boundaries that people assumed existed but never bothered to verify. And now I owned the land I had spent 2 decades mapping. I drove back to my office in Larkspur. It was 4:17 p.m. The light was already failing. I parked behind the county building where I had worked since 1999. 23 years of measuring what people thought they owned versus what the documents proved they controlled. I sat in my truck for 11 minutes. The leather notebook was still in my briefcase. I had started it in 2004. The first entry was dated March 8th. Daniel had introduced me to his parents as the girl who helps with the books. I had been managing the farm's entire financial operation for 6 months. I had written the date, the exact words, the room temperature, the fact that no one had corrected him. I had continued documenting for 18 years. Every assumption, every erasure, every moment I had been credited as assistant when I had been architect. The notebook contained 847 entries. I had not needed all of them, but I had recorded them anyway because numbers are patient and paper does not forget, and eventually every system built on false assumptions collapses under the weight of its own documentation. I went inside. My office was on the 3rd floor, northeast corner. I had requested that location in 2007 because the light was better and I could see the county grid stretching north. Toward the farms I measured every day. My desk was clean. I kept it that way. Survey maps filed by section and township. Deed abstracts organized by recording date. The computer where I had spent 2 decades translating physical reality into legal description. I sat down and opened the file marked Merrick Farm, personal. It contained copies of everything. The original survey I had completed in 2002 showing the 60-foot easement that Daniel's grandfather had granted to the county in 1948 but never formally transferred. The quitclaim deed I had purchased from the county in 2015 for $28,000 after verifying the title had never been perfected. The organic certification records I had maintained from 2005 through 2021. The equipment loan documentation showing I had co-signed for $340,000 in purchases that Daniel had treated as his sole investment. The divorce settlement where I had agreed to walk away with $340,000 cash in exchange for all claims to the farm. The foreclosure notice Daniel had received 93 days after Emma left. The acquisition documents where I had purchased the property at sheriff's sale for $580,000. The final deed showing property owner, Sarah Elizabeth Keene, individually and not as marital property. I printed 1 copy of each document. I placed them in chronological order. I put them in a manila folder. I wrote correction on the tab. Then I locked my office and drove home. I lived in a converted grain elevator 7 miles outside Larkspur. I had purchased it in 2016 for $89,000. I had renovated it myself over 3 years. The upper level was living space. The lower level was storage and workshop. The windows faced west toward the county line. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table. The folder was in front of me. I thought about calling Patricia. I thought about calling my sister in Minneapolis who had stopped speaking to me in 2009 when I married Daniel because she said I was erasing myself. I thought about calling the one friend I had maintained from college who had asked me in 2019 why I was still documenting instead of leaving. I did not call anyone. The correction was complete. The documentation was filed. The numbers had caught up. There was nothing left to say. I opened my laptop. I checked the county assessor's website. The Merrick farm was now listed under my name. Tax parcel 4728-200-003. 240 acres, assessed value $920. The easement access was listed separately. Tax parcel 4728-200-003A, 0.28 acres, assessed value $12,000. I owned both. I sat there until the light failed completely. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel vindicated. I felt the way I always felt after completing a survey, certain of the measurements, neutral about the outcome, aware that property lines exist independent of who wants them where. The numbers had been corrected. The invisible work had been made visible. The erasure had been reversed. And I was finally standing on land I had measured myself, holding a deed no one could dispute, documented with the same precision I had spent 23 years applying to everyone else's property. The wind moved across the frozen fields. The acknowledgement was recorded. The boundary was verified. I sold the equipment to a regional organic cooperative 3 weeks after closing. They paid cash, $140,000 for tractors, planters, and harvest machinery Daniel had maintained with religious attention. The buyer's crew arrived on a Wednesday morning in April with flatbed trailers. I stood in the equipment barn watching them load the green John Deere combine Daniel's grandfather purchased in 1947. The hydraulics hissed when they secured the chains. I did not feel triumphant. I felt like I was dismantling a museum. The 240 acres sat empty through spring planting season. Neighbors called asking if I planned to lease the ground. I said no. Raymond Voss Jr. stopped by the second week of May offering to broker a sale to a development group looking at residential subdivision potential. He stood on the front porch holding architectural renderings of cul-de-sacs and retention ponds. The farm could support 60 single-family homes, he said, premium lots. The county was approving permits. I told him I had other plans. I called Dr. Ellen Cho at the State Conservation Office on May 15th. Ellen and I had worked together on wetland restoration projects for 6 years. She specialized in native tallgrass prairie reconstruction. I asked her what 240 acres of degraded farmland could support if we converted it back to what existed before 1947. She drove out 3 days later with soil testing equipment. We walked the entire parcel. Ellen took samples every quarter mile: soil depth, organic matter content, drainage characteristics, seed bank viability. She mapped the existing fence lines and drainage tiles. She identified 2 wetland depressions Daniel's grandfather had filled in the 1950s. The soil data showed moderate degradation but good restoration potential. The land wanted to remember what it had been. Ellen submitted the report on June 2nd. The farm could support big bluestem, Indian grass, switchgrass, and purple coneflower. Full restoration would require 3 to 5 years. We would need controlled burns, invasive species management, and seeding rotations. The county extension office could provide technical support. The State Conservation Fund might cover 40% of costs if I placed the land under permanent easement. I signed the paperwork on June 20th. The first controlled burn happened October 14th. Ellen's crew arrived at dawn with drip torches and backpack sprayers. I stood at the county road gate watching fire crawl across 80 acres of stubble and invasive fescue. The smoke rose straight up in the still autumn air. By noon, the land was black and smoking. By sunset, the ash had settled into gray powder. Ellen said the next spring would bring seedlings the soil had been holding for 70 years. I filed the conservation easement documents in November. The deed restriction was permanent. No future owner could subdivide, develop, or convert the land to row crops. The 240 acres would remain native prairie in perpetuity. The restriction appeared on page 2 of the recorded easement, directly below the paragraph where Daniel acknowledged my contributions were foundational to the farm's development. Both statements were now part of the public record. Both would survive beyond memory or dispute. I walked the property every Sunday through winter. The blackened ground looked dead under snow, but Ellen said dormancy was not death. The burn had cleared space. The seed bank was intact. The root systems were deep and patient. Spring came in March. The first shoots appeared the second week, tiny green blades pushing through ash and frost heave. Indian grass, and big blue stem. Within 6 weeks, the entire 80 acres showed color. By July, the prairie stood waist-high. Purple coneflower bloomed in the wetland depressions. Monarchs appeared in August. Bobolinks nested in the tall grass in early September. I hired 2 staff in October, a land steward and an education coordinator. We built a small interpretive center in the old equipment barn. School groups started visiting in November. We offered workshops on controlled burning, native seed collection, and soil restoration. The first workshop had 12 attendees. The second had 30. By spring, the waiting list ran 3 months. Raymond Voss Jr. came by in April asking if I wanted to partner on farm-to-table programming for the winery's tasting room. I said no. The land was not producing crops. It was producing itself. He stood looking at the tall grass prairie stretching toward the horizon and nodded slowly. He said it looked like something his grandfather would have recognized. I did not hear from Daniel after closing. Marcus Holt told Patricia that Daniel moved to Ohio, where his cousin managed a community-supported agriculture operation. Emma relocated to Asheville and opened a bakery. The 12 employees found work at other operations or left farming entirely. The farm became something else. Not production, not profit, not legacy measured in yields or certifications or forward contracts. Just 240 acres returning to what it had been before anyone tried to own it or improve it or claim it as theirs alone. I still walk the property every Sunday. I start at the county road gate and follow the easement corridor to the old farmhouse. The house stands empty. I have not decided what to do with it. For now, it sits quiet among the tall grass, windows dark, porch boards weathering gray. I carry the leather notebook when I walk. It holds 847 entries documenting erasure and unacknowledged contributions. I have not added to it since closing. The documentation served its purpose. The ledger is balanced. The corrections are recorded. The land does not care about correction or acknowledgement or the price anyone paid for anything. It just grows. I am standing at the wetland depression where purple coneflower blooms every August. The prairie stretches in all directions, big blue stem and Indian grass moving in long waves under September wind. A red-tailed hawk circles overhead. The soil smells like rain. The land does not care about correction or acknowledgement or the price anyone paid for anything. It just grows. I'm 47 years old. I've been a county land surveyor for 23 years. I measure boundaries for a living. I own 240 acres that cannot be subdivided, developed, or converted. I am Sarah Kincaid. The land remembers. If this story moved you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Tell us in the comments which moment stayed with you. Thanks for staying to the end. We'll see you in the next story.